The core Christian message is a message of good news for people in a world that are in some ways in trouble. And as a result, the core Christian message is sometimes called the gospel, because that word gospel means good news. Now, what are we supposed to do with good news? Imagine you buy a house and then someone pays the mortgage off for you. Hey honey, someone's just paid the mortgage off for us. What do you do with good news? You share it, right? And that's what we're supposed to be doing with the gospel. Now, the church has a mission, and it's all about sharing this good news with people in a world that are in some ways in trouble. And it's most clearly stated in Matthew chapter 28, where it says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you." In its simplest form, it's an instruction to make disciples. Out of Christians? No. The point is we're supposed to make disciples out of non-disciples, and there are two things that are involved. Firstly, we share the gospel, in which case they might respond and be baptized. And then we give them our time, not only to teach them the teachings of Jesus, but to teach them to obey them. And that's our mission. The main responsibility of every Christian church, of every Christian family, and of every church small group. But there are some cultural challenges to this in the West, because religious culture has changed. For example, one of my friends was driving a child through town, and the child said, "Excuse me, miss, what are all those buildings with the letter T on top?" There's a growing ignorance of the Christian message, so we have work to do here as churches. But we're also dealing with a growing indifference toward the Christian message. The Bible explains this in 2 Corinthians 4:4, where it says that the God of this age has blinded the minds of non-believers so they cannot see the light of the gospel. What is blinded? It's the mind. And what's the result? People are genuinely unable to understand the gospel because they believe that all religions are the same. So we share the Christian message with them, and then they say, "Thanks for sharing that. I'm so glad you found what works for you." And they walk away genuinely unaffected. For example, I come from New Zealand. To break down our population, about 46% believe in a God. Let's make that 5 out of 10 people. 31% believe in a higher power. Let's make that 3. And 19% believe in neither. Now, firstly, are we a spiritual people? Definitely. About 80% of us are, just based on these questions. But secondly, how many of the 5 who believe in a God do you think believe that only one path leads to that God? I suggest that you'd be generous to say that even 2 of them do. The rest believe that all religions are essentially the same. And the point is this: our challenge and outreach isn't so much about whether people believe in a God or a higher power or in neither. It's about whether they believe religious truth exists or not. And interestingly, this makes communication of the gospel in a Western cultural environment cross-cultural communication. Now, how do you talk to a person from another culture? Imagine they look different to you, they talk different. Do you assume that they think like you? Of course not. So you ask questions more than you talk. You choose to be intrigued by the differences rather than offended. And the discovery to make is this: if we will apply these same kinds of conversational skills to our spiritual conversations with our non-church friends, family and neighbours, we'll find that a lot more people are interested in talking about this than we might have thought. So in summary, the Christian message is good news, but communicating it in the Western world today is cross-cultural communication. So to be effective, we need to learn how to engage people in non-threatening, two-way spiritual conversations. And what might motivate us to learn how and to practice this? Well, we're told in Matthew 9 about when Jesus looked at the crowds, and it says he had compassion on them because he saw that they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And that compassion is what led Jesus to leave the comfort of heaven. And it's that same compassion and love that will motivate us too, to do what the Great Commission says, to go, to get out of our comfort zones. So, who will you reach out to? And what is it that they currently believe? Because if you're going to reach them, that's probably where this conversation will need to begin. And you won't know what they currently believe unless you ask.